2 o'clock in the morning. A snowstorm on a German highway near Nuremberg. The wind violently hurls snow grit against the windshield. The wipers are working at their absolute limit, but they can barely clear the wet white layer. Visibility has dropped practically to zero. All around is a dense, impenetrable wall of snow and darkness. The driver, Dimitro, holds the steering wheel of the white Mercedes Sprinter with both hands. His fingers are numb from intense strain. He is 48 years old, and he has been behind the wheel for more than 10 hours straight. He knows the Przemysl to Paris route down to the smallest turn, but weather like this is a real test, even for an experienced driver. The GPS on the dashboard lost its satellite connection long ago and just blinks with a red dot. The highway ahead has turned into a mirror-like ice rink. Suddenly, a heavy metallic dull thud echoes from under the hood. The van shudders violently. The engine jerks, rapidly drops RPMs, and dies completely. The speedometer needle slowly falls to zero. Driven by momentum, the Sprinter rolls for another few dozen meters and comes to a heavy stop on the emergency shoulder, almost plowing into a snowbank on the roadside. An absolute silence sets in. All around, there's only a fierce blizzard, crackling frost, and a dark night highway. Dimitro turns the ignition key several times in a row. The starter only clicks pathetically and uselessly in response. The battery is rapidly losing its charge. Inside the cabin, you can instantly hear the metal body contracting and crackling from the biting cold. The temperature inside begins to drop swiftly and mercilessly. There are 6 passengers in the van. Up until this moment, they had been riding in complete, almost detached silence. Each of them was absorbed in their own thoughts, staring at their phone or trying to fall asleep, walling themselves off from their neighbors. They acted like complete strangers who just happened to end up in the same vehicle. In the front seat next to the driver sat Katya, a student. She was traveling to France for her studies, checking her messages the entire time, and never taking off her huge headphones. In the second row sat a gloomy man in a military fleece jacket named Ihor. He hardly spoke, had a stern gaze, and watched the window attentively the whole way. A bit further back sat an elderly couple, Mrs. Maria and Mr. Yaroslav. They were traveling to visit their daughter and grandchildren. They whispered quietly to each other and carefully held an old bag on their laps. And in the last row were 2 young migrant workers, Vadim and Ole. They looked exhausted, sullen, and a bit distrustful of everyone around them. Are we stuck?" grumbled Ole from the back seat, pulling his hands out of his pockets and blowing on his frozen fingers. "Engine seized up," Dimitro answered honestly, wiping the frost off the inside of the windshield with his palm. "The alternator blew, and that's not even the worst of it." Dimitro pulled out his phone. The screen showed a gray icon without a single signal bar. "There's no mobile service," the driver added softly. "Coverage has completely vanished because of the snowstorm." A heavy panic hung over the cabin. It crept in unnoticed and squeezed everyone's throat. Outside, it was minus 15 degrees. The wind was picking up, and the cold was penetrating through winter clothes in just a few minutes. The engine wasn't running, the heater was off, and the nearest 24-hour gas station or town was at least 15 to 20 kilometers away. Katya, the student, was the first to break down. She pressed her thin backpack to her chest, her lips trembling. "We're just gonna freeze here. Nobody will stop in a blizzard like this. They won't even see us in the snow." Panic began to rise. The workers exchanged anxious glances, while Mrs. Maria tightly squeezed the hand of her husband Yaroslav, who was coughing heavily from the cold air. The situation was becoming critical with every passing second. The van's interior was freezing over right before their eyes. And right at that moment, the people who just half an hour ago were indifferent strangers began to change miraculously. The gloomy man in the fleece jacket, Ihor, stood up from his seat silently and decisively. His movements became precise, calm, and confident, as if he knew exactly what to do in an emergency. "All right, no panic. The main thing is not to give in to fear," Ihor said in a low, soothing voice. "Everyone move to the center of the cabin right now. Less open space means the remaining heat leaves slower." He unzipped his large backpack and pulled out 2 large silver thermal emergency blankets made of foil, which he happened to carry with him. "Unfold these," he commanded. "They trap body heat. The panic in the cabin gradually gave way to composure and action. Mrs. Maria, despite her hands shaking, pulled a large 1-liter thermos of hot tea and a package of homemade cookies out of her bag. She didn't save them just for herself or her husband. She got out plastic cups and started pouring the fragrant drink for everyone, one by one. "Drink up, children. Drink up," she said softly and maternally, handing a cup to Katya. "Hot tea will warm you up from the inside. The important thing is not to sit still." The two young workers, Vadim and Ole, who initially seemed distant and rough, were the first to jump up and help. They opened their suitcases and pulled out all the warm clothes they had: padded work jackets, knitted sweaters, spare scarves. Silently, they wrapped these jackets around the legs of elderly Mr. Yaroslav, who continued to cough heavily from the cold, and draped them over Katya's shoulders. "Thank you, boys," Yaroslav said softly, moving his stiff fingers. Ole just nodded. "We're all in the same boat, old man. We'll pull through." Meanwhile, Dmytro tried again and again to catch at least some signal on his phone. He raised the device all the way to the roof, pressed it against the glass, but the screen remained indifferent. The cell towers in the area had failed due to ice accumulation. Another hour passed. The sprinter's cabin had frozen completely. The metal hummed under the wind's assault, and the glass inside was covered with a thick white pattern of ice. Ihor looked around at the people. Katya snuggled close to Mrs. Maria, her teeth chattering. The silver foil blankets helped, but without heating, time was working against them. "Just sitting here waiting for morning is dangerous," Ihor said, turning to Dmytro. "The temperature will drop even lower. If the snow buries us to the roof, the van will turn into a trap. We need to signal for help." "With what?" Dmytro asked. "The hazard lights will die in 15 minutes. "I have an LED flashlight with a red signal mode and spare batteries," Ihor replied. "And in the boys' luggage, I saw it. There's a bright, high-vis construction vest." Dmytro and Ihor put on their thickest jackets and stepped out of the cabin into the biting cold. The blast of wind took their breath away. The icy grit hit their faces painfully. Working with effort, they climbed onto the side step and secured the flashing red flashlight at the highest point of the van's roof. Then they pushed through the snowdrifts 50 meters back and set up an emergency triangle wrapped in the reflective vest. When they returned to the cabin, their eyebrows and eyelashes were completely covered in frost. Katya handed them the last remaining hot tea. Inside the sprinter, there were no longer any strangers. Humanity, care, and a shared trouble had united completely different people into a single family. Another 20 minutes passed, feeling like an eternity. And suddenly, through the heavy roar of the blizzard, the low, powerful rumble of a large diesel engine broke through. Through the thick wall of snow, bright yellow flashing beacons emerged. It was a heavy snowplow from the German road service. Its driver noticed the red flashing light on the roof of the half-buried sprinter and smoothly brought the massive vehicle to a stop nearby. A few minutes later, a rescuer in a bright orange uniform ran up to the van. It turned out that the Highway Patrol Service was already searching for stranded vehicles along this stretch of the road. All the passengers were quickly and carefully transferred to the warm cabin of the arrived patrol bus, and the white Sprinter was hooked up to a strong tow cable. An hour later, they were at a large 24-hour gas station with a warm cafe. They sat at one large table: Dmytro, Katya, Ihor, Mrs. Maria with Mr. Yaroslav, and the worker boys. They drank hot coffee, discussed the night they had survived, and smiled warmly at one another. An extreme situation and a fierce frost had stripped away everyone's mask of indifference. Sometimes, it takes a blizzard and a forced stop on a night highway to remind us. The most important light in the darkness is simple human support and warmth.